Well, the Asian markets, they trade with some caution early this morning, despite the overnight rally that we saw on Wall Street. Now, investors in Asia, they are assessing the fresh uncertainties surrounding UK's withdrawal from the European Union. So on the back of that, we have some of those markets that are seeing some profit booking. The yen is holding steady at around that 108.5 odd mark. But the Nikkei, that's down close to around 1% as we speak. And the other couple of markets as well were quite jittery just to kickstart trade. The Kospi is now more or less flattish, trading with a bit of a negative bias. And the other couple of markets as well. The Taiwanese index is mildly lower, but the Straits, it's a relative outperformer. Yesterday, remember, it had a good rally. And today as well, let's open up with a gain of around 0.5% odd. For starters, though, the SGX Nifty suggesting that the Nifty could give back some part of what it put on yesterday. So maybe a 15 to 20 point downtick just to kickstart trade.
But let's move on to the big headline overnight. UK Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit withdrawal deal with Europe has been rejected by the Parliament. May lost by 230 votes after lawmakers voted by 432 to 202 to reject this deal. This is reportedly the largest defeat for a sitting government in UK political history.
Mr. Speaker, the House has spoken and the government will listen. It is clear that the House does not support this deal, but tonight's vote tells us nothing about what it does support. Nothing about how or even if it intends to honour the decision the British people took in a referendum Parliament decided to hold.
Well, meanwhile, the opposition Labour Party has tabled a motion of no confidence, which will be debated tomorrow. Now let's hear out what UK Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn had to say.
I therefore, Mr. Speaker, inform you I have now tabled a motion of no confidence in this government. And I'm pleased that motion will be debated tomorrow, so this House can give its verdict on the sheer incompetence of this government and pass that motion of no confidence in the government.
CNBC's William Marks reports on the details and what's next for Theresa May.
Theresa May suffered the largest government defeat in Parliament since the 19th century on Tuesday night. After months of insisting that her Brexit proposal was the best option for the UK and essentially the only option open to lawmakers, she finally publicly acknowledged her own efforts had failed. The scale of the parliamentary loss has prompted May to try a new tactic. She says she'll now look for fresh advice on the next step forward from across the political spectrum. But that offer of open-mindedness came too late to appease her main opponent, Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn. He's tabled a motion of no confidence in May's government that will be debated and voted on tomorrow. And what's worth noting is that leading into tomorrow, a new deal for British voters will not be the focus of the Prime Minister's own negotiating efforts. Instead, she'll seek to ensure that none of her own Conservative lawmakers vote against her government, however much they may dislike her Brexit plan. And though Westminster's iconic Big Ben remains under repair, the Brexit clock is still ticking, with a little more than 10 weeks until the UK is, as of now, required to formally exit the European Union. No wonder May's critics are in a rush to find a quick resolution to avoid a no-deal scenario. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon responded to May's defeat with a call to pause that departure process. New polling data indicates that demand for a second referendum on EU membership has gained wider support in recent weeks among voters as well as lawmakers. But this Prime Minister, who survived test after political test, insists she will not pursue that option and calls it a betrayal of Brexit. In London, I'm William Marks for CNBC.
Well, here is some opinion from market experts and lawmakers on the road ahead for the UK Parliament, as they have less than 75 days to go before the country is set to leave the EU on March 29th.
It's hard to believe that anybody went into that vote with very large bets on what would actually happen. It was expected that the vote would be lost, even if not to the margin that it was. And so there's not really a lot of new information. We have a couple of months to get this done. Nobody knows how it's going to end. Whether you were bearish before, you're probably still bearish. If you're bullish now, you're probably still bullish. So I think it was just one of those times when you have a whole lot of light amount of trading, moving something around, and then you end up right back where you started. ultimately, even if we have a no-deal Brexit, that will be disruptive for both the EU and for the pound, and you might see those currencies weaken on the back of that. But they're both large economies, they're both diversified economies, and things are never quite as bad as they could be. Things are never quite as bad as the markets worry they will be. And so, yes, I think that if you were buying an asset in the UK that you felt was not affected by Brexit, then you would buy it and you would buy the currency.
This was a very humiliating defeat for the Prime Minister today. And if she goes back to the House of Commons with a proposal for a similar deal on the table, I think it's going to be soundly rejected by Parliament again. And the prospect of any serious renegotiation, I think, with the European Union is close to zero right now. After all, I think the European Commission has made it abundantly clear they're not interested in renegotiating the EU withdrawal agreement. And so I think the best course of action for the Prime Minister right now is to announce that Britain is preparing for a no-deal Brexit, make sure the preparations are in place for March 29th, move forward on that basis. After all, a no-deal is the default position here.
Well, turning attention to the European markets, they ended higher, in fact, ahead of that crucial Brexit vote. Though in terms of data, economic data, we had Germany's economic growth. That slowed in 2018 to the weakest rate in 5 years, adding to worries about a global downturn and the impact of the trade conflicts. Growth eased to around 1.5% from around 2.2% that it recorded in 2017. So that's about the frontliners. Though if you're looking at the peripheral indices, the Italian markets, they underperformed, banks slumped in trade, and on the back of that, we did see some pressure on those Italian markets.
Let's move on to the US markets then. And on Wall Street, US markets snapped a two-day losing streak with the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq finishing above the important levels for the first time in a month, and Dow rising 150 points led by a robust up move in technology stocks. Fresh round of stimulus in China have also helped to calm fears about the impact of slower Chinese growth on the global economy. CNBC's Eric Shemi gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. stocks finishing the day higher, the Dow adding 155 points, the S&P up 27, and the Nasdaq higher by 117. It's day 25 of the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, and the White House is doubling its estimate for the economic cost of the shutdown, now saying economic growth will drop by 0.1 of a percentage point for every week the government is closed. Meanwhile, Jamie Dimon, the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase and chairman of the Business Roundtable, says that if the shutdown drags on through the first quarter, it could reduce economic growth to zero. Netflix subscribers, listen up. The streaming giant is planning to raise its prices by 13 to 18%. Its most popular plan will see the largest hike, now $13, up from $11. The extra cash will help pay for Netflix's huge investment in original shows and films. It's the biggest increase in Netflix history. Shares of the stock, though, up better than 6%. And it's the final straw for Nestle, the food and beverage company officially phasing out plastic straws and developing biodegradable water bottles, all in an effort to make packaging environmentally friendly by 2025. That's the action from the U.S. market. Back to you in Mumbai.
Well, turning our attention to the currency space, then the US dollar rises versus the euro after the weak German growth data, but the sterling, that rallied following the defeat of the Brexit withdrawal agreement due to strong cross-party support to prevent a no deal from, that could have occurred on March 29th. For starters, though, in fact, now we have the dollar index closer towards the 96-odd mark.
Well, let's move on to the world of commodities then. Crude oil prices, they rise on hopes for China economic stimulus. Prices are also supported from cuts by OPEC and Russia and signs of lower US oil stocks.
Okay, time to slip into a short break. You come back, we'll tell you all the cues and news that are stacked up for us when we open up a trade in the next couple of hours. Don't go anywhere.